And then they tabled it, so we'll come back next month and try again.
Okay, Jeff has given us a heads up that the YouTube is live. We're 10 minutes late. So the first item is the approval of the agenda. There was some minor formatting issues, and so I took the liberty of splitting apart these bulletized items that were on your, so there's the last item, the Horton complex drainage design, and then there's 3 bullets. Those are actually 2 separate items. So can I get approval of the agenda with those modifications?
I'll make a motion to agenda be approved with the modification.
Second.
Kathy, can I get a roll call? Kathy? Are you there, Kathy?
Hang on just a second. I'll go out here talking to somebody. I'll get in the
Okay.
meeting.
Guess I should have checked to see that Kathy was there.
Are we? Oh, I'm sorry, I was on the phone. Samantha?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Rodney?
Yes.
And then we've got the approval of last month's minutes. And these ones were the correct years, so we're good there.
I'm just testing you guys. Come on.
I reviewed them and I thought they seemed okay.
They're a little rambling in spots, but
We're a little rambly in this meeting, so it's conveying it appropriately.
That's
I wish
not
you would-
rambling, that's bureaucratic ease.
Oh yeah. Kind of wish that you would put more of my ums in there.
okay.
I get a motion to approve the minutes.
I so move.
I second.
Kathy, can you do a roll call for us?
Samantha?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Rodney?
Yes.
All right, Rodney, you're up first with your Lakeshore property acquisition. Do you want me to pop up those maps for you?
Yes. So, let's see. Okay. So the piece of property, the thin strip in the center of the map, that's adjacent to the 118 Lakeshore house we recently purchased, is being, the owner is interested in working with the village and possibly donating it to the village. On the left side of that strip, where that, on the bottom side, on the north side, where that bend is, if you go to, to the left, right, where that, on that bend, of that first bend in the line, yes. If you go from there, kind of straight up north, he would like to retain that section in there. And he has a request for the village that I'm working on, but I just wanted input from the committee to see kind of, and a recommendation to council. You know, basically, I see it as a lot of right of way, but near the house, there is some, usable property, that could have some recreational value. And a large portion of the driveway to that house is actually on that lot as well. I did send out the notes, and I think everyone had an opportunity to look it over. I don't know if there was any additional questions or feedback.
I didn't have any comments, Rodney. I mean, if it's being donated, I think it's a great property for us to pick up. I think we can make sure it's properly vegetated to help infiltrate water coming off the road and prevent erosion. Makes sense. Is he keeping this little section for like signage or something?
No, he thinks there may be some future value in it, I believe.
Okay.
Do you have the notes, Eric?
Yeah, I didn't see anyone making any comments on it. So, and Dick, did you send out one with comments?
I think he did.
No, I didn't have any problem with this. I think I filled out the other sheet, but I didn't put anything on this particular sheet.
No drainage issues, I didn't feel.
Rodney, is this piece of property in the county as well?
Yes.
Do you want me to list that down on here, Samantha, as a detail?
Yes, I didn't have any opposition to it. I think it's a good property to take on. I just like this also because it doesn't have zoning attached to it. It's kind of nice. It can be flexible.
Great. It sounds like nobody has any issues with this, if I'm hearing it right. It didn't look like there's a lot of trees on there, so I'm sure it doesn't have any forestry liabilities, correct, Dick?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, Rodney, you want us to just make a motion that we don't see any watershed liabilities with this property?
Yes, and if you could mention that it does have potential uses for watershed protection, recreational space, and access to our property.
Okay, why don't you make the motion? You can. I can't make it. You got it.
Gosh, I didn't write all that down. I make a motion that the village or that the watershed committee recognizes that there are no liabilities with the acquisition of this property, and it does have potential for watershed protection, recreation and open space, and additional access to existing Village of Reynosa property. Did that sound okay, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, Kathy, could you call the roll?
Samantha,
Aye.
Eric,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Rodney.
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna save this and send it to you, Rodney, okay?
Okay.
So the next one is your two items, or your items about chip sealing and paving.
So, let's see.
And I've got
I
maps,
was-
I got GIS up if you want me to pop up any of these locations.
Yeah, sure, that would be great. Maybe you can do, yeah, each of them at a time, I guess. It'll aid a little bit. And so what I had wanted the Watershed Committee to consider was, evaluating the possible chip sealing or paving of parking areas that are currently just either gravel or native field dirt or native material. And the reason being is really for aiding in having some type of structured parking arrangement at these recreation facilities. Whenever the parking areas are not, or if they do not have parking bumpers, people just park wherever they can, or whatever is convenient for them, and parking really gets out of hand right away. Grindstone isn't necessarily at this point as kind of important to have it chip sealed, because we do have parking bumpers designating all the parking spaces. But it is one area that, again, I just wanted to see what the committee thought. And then, again, the same would really apply to, could you pull up, what was the next one, Alto Lake? So this one doesn't show the upper parking lot as it is currently, but that entire area, the original parking area and the upper parking lot is just like a base course surface. And again, because it doesn't have parking bumpers or any other type of structured parking arrangement, it becomes a nightmare if it's not monitored. And so this past year, what we did is we had staff go out and stripe the gravel. Originally, we were using a chalk material that we line our athletic fields with. Of course, that didn't last too long. We were end up going and re-chalking every week. So we went to a temporary marking paint, and that would last 2, sometimes 3 weeks. We were having to restripe. And so if those areas, had a more durable surface, it would, and we have the ability to, instead of use temporary marking paint, we could kind of do a more permanent. It sure would help with the creating, again, a uniform parking kind of program for that lake. And then if you'll go ahead and slide over to Eagle Creek, Eric. So the same thing happens here, on the areas where there's straight lines, like along the edges of the ball fields, it's not quite as, the parking is not quite as haphazard as the other places. But whenever you get away from those straight lines, when you get to the interior of those parking lots, there's not really anything that designates parking. And so, like in the winter operations, they have designated staff to actually physically park or aid in parking every vehicle. And the way we've traditionally run our summer operations is we don't have that type of staff, and so we just kind of leave it up to the individuals to park. Again, in the more open areas, not along the edge of the fields, parking becomes so inefficient that, I mean, it's just, sometimes it's even kind of a safety concern. On the overnight tournaments, we typically have our heaviest use around 10 a.m. to about 2 a.m. And if staff happens to kind of overlook someone who's parked in an area and then someone else parks behind them and someone else parks behind them, that's where we see potentially some safety issues for emergency vehicles getting in and out of that complex. So our staff really has to be on top of it during those hours to keep that to either a minimum or no issues. And this one is a little bit different. Between the fields on the right and that parking area, I know that area is used for where they make their snow and pile it up. I haven't visited with Dorgan about the winter operations and how it would impact him. But again, it would be a benefit. So I really don't have any other.
Does anyone know? So, like a gravel road typically has a traffic rating where it's only supposed to get so many vehicles per week. Otherwise, the gravel gets ground up and chalky and kicks up a lot of dust. Is there similar ratings for parking lots? Because to me, these parking areas are, especially Grindstone and this one here at the ball fields, this probably has more traffic than a gravel layer could handle.
I'm not aware of anything. Sam, are you?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
To me, it makes sense for here at the sports complex. I've always been concerned at how it's like this area seems unnecessarily wide, and you could streamline the process, and there could possibly be some segments of land that could be opened up, and you could put landscaping and other buffer strips in addition to making the parking more efficient.
I think that's a really great point, Eric. And I guess you get stuck in a rut. You don't think about those things. And, I have that upcoming conceptual plan going to be completed for those operations. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot of those areas that are wider than.
Yeah, like I'm sure this area is very misutilized for space. There's probably some way to streamline it a little bit better too.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Do you have any concerns with this particular area about like runoff or anything associated with that chip sealing?
I mean, I'd rather just have asphalt and have it be consolidated. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we could create adequate buffer strips. And I think if we looked at the drainage there and set up some type of process where the water just doesn't directly flow to the creek.
Yeah.
I mean, it already does flow there, so who knows what is coming off of all these vehicles. But I think with the pavement, you might be able to direct it more to where you want it to go.
Yeah, and I think just like you said, there's areas that even up there along the edge of that hill, along the side of each field, and if we could create those buffer areas that we could slow down that water and infiltrate some, it sure would help. We get a lot of runoff on the fields as well.
Yeah, when I've been out there, it seems like there's a lot of stuff coming here through this field.
Oh yes, there is. I mean,
That drainage comes off of there, right through that field. The one where he's got his snow course that comes down little drainage comes
Yeah.
off. One thing I was wondering about, Rodney, if you blacktop that thing and have it marked off, will you limit the number of people to the number of spaces? If you don't, it looks like to me you're gonna have the same problem with people parking behind one another and just wherever they want to.
Yeah, so in a sense, for the summer operations and the tournament operations, Dick, it's in a way, the tournament registrations kind of limit the number of people. Typically, I mean, it's not like it's spectators, it's participants that are parking in there. And, you know, from, gosh, years and years of kind of just history, the parking is adequate if they follow some type of you know, structured parking. It's whenever you run into, when it's not structured is when you run into the issues. Because like I was mentioning, you know, during those like early morning hours, what I had noticed through my years is you'll have someone that's running late. They come in at the last minute and they park anywhere they want. And that is what starts backing up vehicles, because typically then someone else parks next to them or behind them. And on like, for example, on the first field on the left, there's kind of a pinch point between the home plate and the mountain. Yes, in that area, we have vehicles, because they are running late, they'll pull in. Instead of pulling in perpendicular to the field, they'll pull in parallel. We even mark that off where it's kind of with cones and flagging. And again, when people are in a hurry, they just park there. Well, that just created a pinch point. We would see a lot of pinch points where there's only enough space for one vehicle to get through there. And so whenever you got, you know, vehicles trying to enter and exit at the same time, it starts backing up even more. You know, we're fortunate that we've never had an emergency at that time, because it would, you know, they wouldn't be able to get in. So,
I think to me, from a water resource perspective, a gravel area doesn't really soak in that much water, so it's not like this is infiltrating a ton. And so the benefits of paving it for just the operations, as long as we look at, you know, freeing up some areas where we can possibly get in some smaller infiltration areas, and then especially at these, you know, these two areas, if we can look at ways to maybe sacrifice some of this tip that might not have adequate parking, to put in like a basin or something that catches it first and then it flows over. And you could even still have a access service road around the outside, but maybe sacrifice a little bit there to catch it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, and I think the way, you know, if we operate out there, that's really not a vital piece of parking anyways. We even block those areas off during the tournaments, because if you don't, people are gonna drive back there. They just start damaging.
You have 20 cars parked back here on this one road.
Yes. So we try to block it off anyways. So that would even give us a more formalized kind of barrier.
Okay, so we don't need to vote on this, but I mean, Dick, are you okay with this? It seemed, at least here, you're okay with this?
Just wondering about if you blacktop it, it's gonna increase the heat around the blacktop, particularly in the summertime. Is that gonna be any kind of an issue for the summer tubing or any of that kind of stuff, it probably won't increase more than maybe 2 or 3 degrees around that blacktop. But the other thing I was wondering about is if you put an oil topping on that thing that drains right into the creek, is that going to be an issue?
That's why I think we're gonna look at setting up a catchment basin on these peaks here, Dick. That should be able to do the, well, I can, so Rodney, if you can start kind of looking at conceptual prices, we can probably talk with Chris to see about getting a hydrology study so that we can know what is the storm event, like 100-year storm event, so we can look at trying to capture that at least first flush. That's the worst one, where you want to get all of those vehicle chemicals into that basin to soak in, and then any other water is relatively clean and that can go by.
Okay.
And then,
And, you know, Dick, to your,
sorry, Rodney, maybe we can, to help with the pavement too, is if there's an increase in landscaping, maybe that can help with shading.
right? Yeah, that is a good point as well. And then to your point, Dick, about the asphalt, I'll visit with the winter operations and see how that would impact them. It might be something that they are, I would guess, might not even be interested in. Because it is that's again where all the majority of their snow is. But I'll look into that.
And on the lakes, I think that striping and things may be good as far as once you get your capacities established and things, your parking lot can help you manage that capacity if you limit cars to where they can park and available spaces and that kind of stuff. So I think that's probably a good deal.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Rodney. It'd be nice, but it would be nice to look at the drainage and how we can try to get these parking lots to drain in known areas. I'm not exactly sure how the drainage works here. I just remember this being higher and this lower, but I don't know if it leans towards the highway or the hillside. But that would just be something to look at.
Right. I think from what I best recall, it drains into that, what is that, the north? Yeah, a little bit north of that, to that point. Right.
Oh, up here. And then it routes down.
Yeah. I don't recall any high runoff from any of those parking lots, but I'm pretty sure that's the way all of that slopes. Because there's sort of like a swale or a valley right behind that guardrail along the road.
Yeah. And then it curves down here.
Yeah.
And this is lower than this road, and it comes down, and we might actually need to look at does there need to be a culvert here? You might have to think about the drainage a little bit here.
Right.
The other part of that on the south end of that parking lot may drain into this drainage and through this other parking lot. Yeah, in that area. Seems to me it kind of breaks off right there. There should be maybe some of that parking lot that drains into that drainage.
How far back do we own there? Okay. This might be an area too that we might want to look at putting in some like check dams and other things too. And so that would help out too if the south side of the parking lot comes down here, and then the mess that's going on here.
Yeah.
We could stop it from just going right into the reservoir.
Eric, if I could, what I would like to do is to note, especially, this area at Alto Lake, and note those areas that we pointed out at Eagle Creek about potential areas where we can, try to slow down that water, and add this to our ongoing list of potential projects.
Sure.
I have a bad memory. But if we
No,
can refer back
yeah,
to
no,
the
I
list-
agree, and I've actually been thinking about that once Ashley and I get a little bit of free time, I would really like to go and hike our property holdings and identify locations where it might be good to put in some one rock check dams and other infiltration structures, and just get kind of a master plan laid out of where we can do some improvements. And then that's where, it'd be nice to train the eco servants on how to deal with building those structures and funding them to start putting in some of those, because a lot of it's just handwork things.
So is Ashley taking notes? Oh, and
I can check this out. I'll try to hike this next week, and we can try to get it in that plan, because this is right in that vicinity that you're planning out.
Yeah.
But it's just, there's kind of I think there's a bigger need, and I probably should actually, when Dick does maintenance work, I probably should be going out with him, and me and him could probably mark a lot of the potential areas while we're thinning.
right. Something that I said that I hadn't really contemplated while I was started talking about this is, Grindstone, we put in those parking blocks, and that makes a huge difference. It doesn't it doesn't keep people from still parking occasionally in areas where they shouldn't, but it helps tremendously trying to keep things arranged, and that's a good example of the way people are parked the way they are right now. That's when we had parking blocks. And, I'm not sure. I think at kind of an easy solution and a lot more affordable is putting parking blocks. But I still think but like at Eagle Creek, I still think slowing down that water, because when it rains out there, it's just really running off. And like you said, it's dumping all that stuff out of the parking lots right into the river. But either way, I think that's something to consider as well, is adding parking blocks.
Sure. I think that it's a good thing. I personally think it would be good to pave these parking areas. But the main thing is to make sure that we got the drainage right, because
Yes.
once you pave it, we'll never end up tearing it out and fixing.
Okay. The more we talk, I think I'm going to try to approach this in a kind of a phased approach. And I think eventually, pavement and a proper drainage plan for each one of those areas is vital. So, but again, with the phased approach, if I can at least start with parking blocks, and then, we could work towards drainage design. And then once that's completed, and then you could do, construction of the paving and those structures at the same time. I think.
Yeah.
If there's any planting.
And I think that, to me, in some of these areas, you would still want those parking barriers, even if it was paved, because
Yes.
people are going to drive off the edge here. So it's not a waste of money to have those and then put them back after paving.
Yeah, I would agree.
I already miss our little box elder, Rodney, that you took out. That was a box elder, right?
No, it was an elm.
It was? Okay, never mind.
No, I'm just kidding. Well, I appreciate the input. This has been very helpful, and I'll work towards putting costs together and for these phases.
Okay.
And then I'll include it on the Eagle Creek information with Groundwork Studios as well.
Alrighty. Okay, So our next thing is the Horton Complex drainage design. I think I really beat that to death at the workshop meeting, but I did want to, did anyone have any comments that you wanted to convey after that presentation?
And the only thing that I saw was that you've got enough green areas and things that we can meet the ordinance specs for number of trees and those kind of things, and a lot of the green spaces and whatever, so I don't think it'll really be a problem.
Okay, and so the way that this project is going to be bid out is we're going to provide a plant palette of plants that we feel are acceptable, and then the contract is going to have a landscape designer do a design build for the irrigation and planting. So Dick, once we get that list of plants, I will submit it to you to do a review and confirmation on the species.
Okay, sounds good. The only thing that the ordinance really says is that we ought to try to keep a forested aspect, and so it calls for a number of trees and it calls for some brush species. I personally think that the amount of brush species it calls for is counter to fire mitigation, and so that's, if we ever amend that ordinance, that's something we need to take into consideration. But for this,
Sure.
we'll just we'll make it work.
So I did, so you were saying, Dick, that the ordinance is trying to shoot for 40 trees per acre. That's your assumption for 14-inch trees per acre, correct? Dick? Are you there? Okay. Well, hopefully Dick is okay. But I did the calculations I did a rough calculation of green space in the area, and there's 1.8 acres of green space. So that's 72 trees looking at. So we'll have to figure out in that planning set where to get them. I don't remember how many trees are already on the landscape as is, but it's not many.
Yeah, Kathy said I was muted, but we can make it work. The main thing, as far as we're concerned, is that we have maintain a forested appearance and don't have ladder fuels and those kind of things.
Sure.
And so we've got a lot of latitude in how we can fix it.
Mm-hmm. We're going to target kind of deciduous trees up here in the stormwater areas, Dick, but this area will really focus in on the coniferous and get those pines and firs or whatever else you would like in these green space areas.
Okay, we'll make it work.
All right. Any other concerns? All right, the next item is the year one project on village properties as part of the Forest Service Restoration Grant. And so we applied with the NRCS and the Forest Service to do a kind of a landscape level restoration project. And I felt that it was very haphazard, but we did win. And so this first year allotment was for $500,000. And then it's a 3-year project, and I think the total budget was like $4 million or so. And so they did put in there to do projects on village property. And so our first year project is to do riparian improvements at Eagle Creek. And so we were looking at this stretched to the west of the ball fields in that area that Dick had just performed the thinning. But we're going to be looking at setting up, since the elevation of Eagle Creek drops substantially here and is in this channelized area, we're going to be looking at putting in some beaver dam analog structures that will check the water and slow it down, and then encourage sedimentation and rebuilding of that floodplain area that's been eroded away from this area. And hopefully we'll get some riparian species to start growing in this stretch. So Larry Cordova has some structures going in on the district. I'm not sure where in April, but he's got the Trout Unlimited group is really super energized and are going to be doing all of the labor for some beaver dam analogs installations elsewhere. And Larry thinks that they would be interested in participating in a project like this on village land. And so I was going to try to join them during the construction of those to see the process and how it works, and possibly to meet some of those Trout Unlimited folks. And didn't know if anyone else wanted to try to possibly join and see how it's done and maybe make some ties to them. I can get the date of that. But I'm going to be trying to schedule a meeting with Larry Cordova and Pete Harridan with the Forest Service to do an inspection here and mark out proposed locations for structures, and then start the permitting process with the Army Corps. So if anyone's interested in participating in that, just give me a heads up and I'll make sure you're included.
I'm interested, Eric.
Okay.
Eric, I'd like to be included too. Let
Sure.
me ask you a question. You're talking about silt catchment and those kind of things. Are you trying to make any kind of a fishery improvement out of this too?
There's, with Eagle Creek being an intermittent stream, I don't think that a fishery is going to be able to be built there. But it just depends on how, there was some records of fish being present in Eagle Creek like way back in the 50s. And there's the periodic one that flushes down from South Fork Eagle Creek, but there really hasn't been a fisheries here since the 50s. But maybe with increased forest management in the area, and if we start emphasizing watershed improvements, it might get some more consistent flows. And then we might be able to build some pools and stuff that can hold some of these species during low flow periods.
Well, some of these native trout are pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
Way back when on Diamond Creek on the Gila trout was held in one small stream, Diamond Creek, and that was intermittent with pools, and they were living in water up to 80 degrees and whatever.
Sure. And so I think, Dick, when we have that meeting, I think it'd be great to come out there, because Larry is introducing cutthroat trout to other areas. I'm sure that they're focusing in on the areas that are the best condition, but we could talk about the possibilities of trying to implement some of that stuff associated with village properties.
Okay, well, whenever you do that, I'd like to have the opportunity.
Samantha's not an outdoorsy person, so she doesn't want to go.
She could
Yes,
always,
take me. I want to go. Don't leave me here in the office.
you could always soak her feet in the water.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm super excited about this. We're going to be looking at doing this in the summer, so probably in June, July, based on the permitting. That also reminds me too, Samantha, I'll need to get Bill involved in this since it's in town for floodplain permit.
Okay.
So our last item is the Ski Run Road property. So This parcel that I had you guys evaluate is kind of one of the last unsubdivided sections in Eagle Creek. It's a 28-acre area, and it's owned by, I think, a dentist in Florida. But I talked to him on the phone. I got a feeling that he feels this property is worth a lot more than it actually is. So I think it's unlikely that we'll be able to acquire this. But I did talk to him about getting it appraised, and he said if the price was right, he would be interested in selling it. So the appraisal came in at $520,000. And I'd be looking at acquiring it for well field development in the future if we get kicked off of Forest Service land to put additional wells to compensate for the North Fork well field. There's also some potentials with the drainage that's coming in to do some improvements. And it's definitely a fire risk as it is in its current condition. So everyone filled out the sheet. Dick, it sounds like, so we got about a $80,000 budget that we need to set aside to get it thinned.
Yeah, that is just an estimate. It would have been good if we'd got it 7 or 8 years ago before those logs started deteriorating. But what happened now is that the logs aren't really going to be good for fuel wood. And so it's going to be a matter of, I don't know how many tons per acre those big logs are, but it's a lot. And so that's going to drive the cost up. What would normally cost $1,500 or $1,000 for thinning to $2,500 to $3,000 an acre in order to get that thing to our standard.
Okay. So I will, as I'm looking for budgeting, I will try to make sure that there's adequate funds for that. Did we lose you, Rodney?
I'm sorry, Eric. You did not lose me, but I was distracted.
Okay. Did you have any comments about the ski run road?
No, I'm all for it. I like it. I think I did add comments on there.
Yes.
So I support that.
And I'll write down a comment here for you, Samantha, that it's in the county.
She wants me to open up a petting zoo or something, I think.
All right. So Fred, what I'm getting at is if somebody could make a motion that the biggest liability for this property is the forest tree density, and that when we budget for it to add $80,000 liability for thinning.
Yeah, I can also move that.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, Kathy, can you do a roll call for us?
Samantha,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Dick,
Yeah.
Rodney.
Yes.
Okay. So the last thing is projects round robin. I'm sensing that we're all getting tired of this meeting, so if we could make it quick. Rodney, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, I'll share a little bit about the beach. So that project is like 99% complete. I know Eric and I walked it earlier in the week, wanting to address a couple of issues with additional rock and some putting some wattles around some of the disturbed soil. And I know that, so we got a price on the materials to create our own wattles because the ones that county had are all rotting. And if we purchase the screen, I guess, the material for the wattles, we could always fill them up with our the forest waste that we can get from Sierra Contracting or the village. I'm not sure where we're at on the additional rocks. I haven't had a chance to, I did instruct staff to complete it, but I haven't had a chance to review that. I think that's about it.
All right. That shipping price for those wattles was pretty crazy high. It was like $90. Are they shipping that freight or something? Why is it $90 for shipping?
I'm not sure, Eric. I don't know.
I'll talk to T-Bone about it, but I was thinking that we should buy more than that if the green mulch works for it. And if you got space so that we can store the socks for a while.
Yeah, I think it's worth finding the space to have it on hand.
Okay.
So when we need it, we can make it up.
Samantha, anything from the mayor's office?
No, just, I know a couple of you guys were on with that subdivision development for Glen Remington, and there's a lot of water issues within that development. But they do have engineered plans that are being worked out. But if you all have any feedback or recommendations, I know Mr. Remington is recommending the village assume responsibility of the detention pond and all infrastructure once it's built out. So, yeah, if you have any recommendations to that, whether you think we should assume that responsibility or not, I'd appreciate it. And Dick, I had a question. Are they in compliance with that tract fee for forestry?
No, they were in our implementation area and he didn't do it. But last Friday, I had a meeting with Glenn and he said he would start on it immediately and be done by the end of April. So it should be in compliance by the end of April.
Oh, okay. His neighbor had brought that up during the meeting, so I wasn't sure if he was or not. That's all I can think of right now.
Okay. Dick, anything?
Okay, we finished the 5.4 acre that we acquired north of P&M, and a couple of issues showed itself, and then one of them was the wellhead that's there in the concrete housing, and then there's a couple of concrete slabs that are there. Other than that, we picked up all the barbed wire and pipe and stuff that was above the ground. And so Rodney, I don't know, Eric said that he might have to cap that well or whatever, but we're done with that part. And we've issued a contract for taking off those 42 dead trees in the grindstone area. Some of those are on the Frisbee golf course. And so we may have to do some coordination with the big tournament that's coming on, so we don't get in the way of that. And I have a question for Rodney. Rodney, there's a big dead tree in the middle of the parking lot at Alto Lake. I thought about it might be nice to leave that as a high stump so you could carve some kind of a bear out of it or something, so it might fit well in that lake.
Where's that at, Dick?
It's right in the parking lot, just on the, I guess it'd be the west side of that parking lot. There's a pretty good size. It's like a 15, 16, 17 inch diameter ponderosa pine.
Oh.
This one right here, Dick.
I haven't seen the tree myself, but I understand it from Cass. It's across to the west of where you got your cursor there. It's
Oh, like one of these ones.
No, it's the other side of the road, down.
Oh, in this section,
Somewhere in here, yeah.
okay.
Gas said it's
Yeah,
in the middle of the parking lot, so I'm not sure where it is, but from where he said, I thought it'd be kind of neat to have a bear carving there.
is it marked?
Yeah, it is marked.
Okay, I'll look at it on my way home, I'll let you know.
Okay.
I think it's a great suggestion.
And other than that, we've been doing a lot of thinning on, village right of ways, taking out trees where they're too thick and whatever. And we've completed probably, I don't know, 10 streets so far, and we're still got a little bit of money, so we're going there. And the 42 dead trees were some of those we talked about earlier. And I don't have the exact price, but I think they went for about $2,500. So that'll be about $2,500 a month spraying money.
All right. Thank you, Dick.